This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is your host, Harry Wilkinson. And, I'm here in the aftermath of a rather large snowstorm. But luckily for us, everything seems to be in fairly good shape. No power outages, no major damage so far as I can tell. So, just a lot of snow on the ground. Too much snow, making it difficult to even walk, let alone drive anywhere. So, here I am. Luckily, I can do my show from home and not have to worry about traveling out there. Yeah, it's quite a big storm. So today's show is special because there's quite a few interesting things going on from the perspective of the transition era, which I've been talking about quite a bit for the past several months on this show. And also from the perspective of how this show, how I look at news, information, and so forth from the spiritual or metaphysical perspective of what we are creating and what we are becoming, and how all of these stories that we create are ways that we express that, ways that we are able to experience different ways of being, different thoughts that from the highest perspective would not be accurate reflections of who and what we really are. Let's just put it that way. We engage in the mundane world, if you will, on sort of a holographic game board, in a way, that we have created at the highest of our level, the highest level of our being, so that we can have these experiences, that we can play this game, we can pretend, in a way, that we are not, infinite beings, that we are not powerful beings, but that we are weak and frightened and scared and flawed and in pain and all of the other things that we experience within this hologram, if you will. And our news stories are part of that, are part of how we express that. But going into them from that perspective, recognizing what we have created, how we are making that experience happen, and appreciating the amazing ability that we have to do that, while also realizing that it isn't real. It's what we've created. It's what we've created to play with. All of those realizations are very powerful, and they come or they don't in some cases. But when they do come, it reshapes how you view everything. If you view everything from the lens of bad, good, duality, happy, sad, joyful, pain, then this shifts you out of that. It shifts you into a perspective that says, this is all joyful. This is all part of it. That this pain or this fear or this anger or whatever it is doesn't really exist, but it's something that is part of what we're creating here. So some people get that. Some people scratch their heads. some people have a lot of people have a delayed understanding of that, and they finally come around. They say, you know what, I see what that means. That certainly was the case for me, and it is an ever-evolving awareness, because that's what it is. It's an awareness, and from where we are as living beings playing the human game, if you will, our awareness is limited, but we have opportunities to expand it. But I think it's only going to expand so much in as much as we are ready to play a different game that requires a more expanded awareness. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, because I think that's what's happening. I think that's what the transition era is part of, this expansion of awareness, so that we can begin playing a different sort of game, one that might be more in line with who and what we really are in life, in truth. And one of the aspects of that, and I call it the transition era, as some of you who follow the show may be aware, I call it the transition era because we went through a period of years from 2012 to 2015 where there was, and I use an astrological alignment to sort of illustrate this. The alignments were between Pluto, which is the planet of, in some cases, aggression, oppression, darkness, violence, anger, and Uranus, which is the planet of revolution, change, new frontiers, innovation. And these two have, during those years, were sort of at odds with each other, and that at oddsness created a space in which many things came to the fore, and the seeds were planted for radical change. And we saw this in the Middle East with the Arab Spring. We've seen it with things like the Black Lives Matter movement and the other 98%. The strong and increased awareness of the income inequality problem in not just the United States but throughout the world. All of these seeds have been planted and are beginning to grow. And when those two planets, Uranus and Pluto, work together in positive alignment, astrologically speaking, great progress can be made rather quickly. And that's kind of what happened during the 60s and 70s. But when their alignment is tense and kind of not quite harmonious, then what you have is this sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of approach, where Uranus is setting up the time, and the time is right for change, but there's still quite a bit of pullback from Pluto. And so that's why you're seeing some progress being made, and in some areas very rapid, and in others not so much. So, but it has set into motion what I call, which we are now in this transition era, and so we are going to see radical change on every level in the economy, which I've spoken about. I've done several shows on that. I'm going to come back to that today. In how we view spirituality and religion, in how we view education, all of these things are going to go through radical change. But I wanted to talk about the money aspect of the economy, because here we are in 2016, and just as people, experts have sort of been saying that we are, coming out of the financial crisis that started in 2008, well, we haven't quite come out of it, it seems, or we're headed back into it. And this, I think, is part of this, push-pull, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing that's going on with the transition era. We are trying to transition to something more economically viable and sound than our approach has been for, well, decades, centuries now even. Yet there's still resistance to that it's still not quite there yet. So there are warnings now that we're going to have another financial crisis come about. And mainly because we still haven't really solved or embraced the changes that need to happen in our economy. We still, for the most part, have propped up the old ways that we've been doing things, and with very little changes or surface changes. And now I think it's quite possible we'll have to discover that the changes need to go much deeper than people wanted to deal with. And I think it's part of the human game that we don't really go in and do the changes we need to do until we are almost forced to. So it's my thought that this is probably what's going to happen. Certainly, I'm hearing echoes of that. There's a great book out. It's been out for a couple of years now, called The Crash of 2016, written by talk show host Tom Hartman, where he details very succinctly and with much historical citation to back it up, what he thinks is going to happen and why, and what that will lead to, and the changes that will lead to. And now we've got this article that came out a couple weeks ago, earlier in the month, and this is from the UK, where a gentleman by the name of Albert Edwards is an economics expert in London and in the UK. He's talking about that the world seems to be heading for another financial crisis that will be as severe as the crash of 2008. And he's warning that it could prompt the collapse of the Eurozone. Now, many people have been predicting that for quite some time. But he makes some good points. He says he believes that they're going to be hit by a wave of deflation from emerging market economies, and that central banks are unaware of the disaster about to hit them. He thinks developments in global economy will push the U.S. back into recession. And so far, the stock market has been a disaster for ever since the beginning of the year. So, there's definitely cause and evidence to back up what is being said by some. This man says the financial crisis will reawaken and be every bit as bad as in 2008, and will turn very ugly indeed. Of course, that's all frightening, and to some, and part of it has to do with the oil cost being very, very low, and that's sending ripples through economies that are based on income from selling oil. Here's the thing, and this is why what we do on this show is we take a look at this, we take the step back, and we look at it from a higher perspective. such as what I was expressing to you before. The fact that this crash, when it happens, will give us another opportunity to reassess and deepen our commitments to the changes that need to be made, and the understanding of how a sound economy will need to work in our new world. So, part of that is changing our view of money, understanding money. And when we think about money from a spiritual perspective, we know that money is energy. We know that energy is part of us, and that it's an expression of that, and that it's limitless. In other words, the energy is everywhere. You just tap into it. Where we go wrong is we forget that it's energy. We begin to put ideas of limitation, of loss, and sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Loss and we begin to think about hoarding things and holding on to things and being terrified of that there's not enough. And money isn't about that. The energy that money isn't about that. Isn't about that at all. And as we change our perspective, we change how we view money and how we deal with it, we start to understand that a little bit more. There's a book, it's called Sacred Economics. And it's by Charles Eisenstein, who talks about what the future might hold as far as a different perspective on the economy. And one of the things he talks about is the concept of negative interest money. Negative interest money, backed by things that are sacred in an ecological economy, could be utterly revolutionary, he says, fundamentally altering the human experience. This transformation, he says, reverberates across all levels, from outer to inner, from the economic to the spiritual. So, he explains how a negative interest money works. And we'll get back into it. But basically, the way we deal with money now, right? You get a loan, or a company gets a loan. Bank loans the money at a certain percentage of interest. That interest accrues over time, making the money more valuable, and the loan more valuable, so that banks, if you can't, if problems happen and the loan can't be paid back, the banks shut down. They don't lend money anymore. And that's what happened, during the crash. Banks became very wary about lending any money at all, and they were just going to hold on to what they had. With the concept of negative interest money, what happens is the money that is held on to, whether it's the banks or whether it's billionaires or whatever, the longer they hold on to the money, the less its value is. So let's say you have $1,000 and you hold on to that. Well, the way it used to be, I guess, if you put it in either a interest-bearing savings account or you invested it, you get a return on that investment, and then that money would increase. But with negative interest money, the value decreases. So $1,000 next year is only going to be worth $900, and in 5 years is only going to be worth $800. And so this brings, among other things, an incentive for banks and others to lend money, to use money, because if you don't use it, it devalues, it becomes lesser. So that's kind of the idea of that. I'm going to come back to it because I want to get into this Planet 9 business. And Planet 9, I've been talking about how astrology, I've been using astrological terms as sort of symbols to talk about the transformations that we're going through and the transition era that we're in. And this Planet 9, which has been discovered by scientists, although they don't have any physical evidence for it yet. But they know it's there. It's kind of like in the same way that scientists have been studying dark matter. They can't see it, but they know it exists because of its effects can be felt and seen. And that's kind of the case with this Planet 9. And this Planet 9 heralds an awful lot. And I think really it makes even clearer for me this concept of a transition era we're going through. And I want to read to you some thoughts from astrologers, particularly John Kaner. He's a UK astrologer, and he wrote quite a nice article about how he sees this planet. Now, this planet, I just want to make the case that it's the result of some information from a team at the California Institute of Technology. They don't have any direct observations to confirm its presence just yet. But they're making the claim based on, again, the effects that they are seeing. They believe that this planet would have 10 times the mass of Earth, but they're having a hard time actually finding where its direct location. And from what I heard, it looks like they think that they will actually have the physical evidence, within another 5 years or so. So here's symbolically, of course, that's how astrologers deal with planets and their effect on humans. They read them as symbols. So one of the things that John Kaner is saying here is that this planet, the discovery of this planet at the extreme end of our solar system, could eventually herald the end of money as we currently know it, a time when the whole human race revels in unprecedented prosperity and the emergence of a more loving and trusting society. Now, that's a pretty bold prediction, and I know Mr. Kaner's work and how he does things. He rarely goes out on a limb like that with bold predictions like that, but he is definitely doing that here. He likes the symbolism. He sees symbolism in the way the planet's been announced. As I just told you, there's no tangible proof, which means they have to sort of take it on faith in a way that this planet is there. And he calls this an element of mystical resonance. it's kind of this mysterious energy has emerged, and we don't know what it is. It's a call to adventure in a way, and it is a call that's inviting us to, as he says, take this leap of faith and believe in the unbelievable. So, as I've mentioned, I think the signs have been here for this transition era for a while, but the appearance of this planet, I believe, is heralding, even more about this transition era. Now, he also equates this, and some people have been saying that the world, there's this heavenly body called Nibiru, a planet that was known to the ancient Babylonians, and they sometimes refer to it as Planet X. And this is, you may have heard, rumors about the Earth's magnetic poles, flipping, and this is what they attribute that to. So there are some people who have sort of a dark side view of this kind of thing. But he sees, and I agree, Planet 9 as a herald of positive transformation. But, within transformation, when things change, there are always going to be some who see that change as horrific because they can't accept the change. They think the change is taking them someplace they don't want to go, and they're frightened. So transformation will always be seen by some as apocalyptic, as chaotic. And in some ways, transformation is a chaotic process. Things are changing. You don't know quite what's happening. The new stuff isn't right in place yet, and the old stuff is flying out the window. So when you're in that transition, yes, it feels chaotic, of course. But if you keep your eyes on the prize, so to speak, and ride it through, you end up in a place that's maybe a lot better than you expected. So, Planet 9. And then I think we should also talk about, the timing of all this. And, in his article, Kaner talks about that. Planet 9's arrived at a time when, the priests of prosperity, as I just told you, are panicking, and the world stock exchanges are in unprecedented turmoil. Safe bets aren't safe anymore. And, people are wondering about, revolution in many ways, even in our political system, which we talked about that in past episodes. We'll come back to that, but right now, just to stick with the money thing, and I like the way that John Kaner puts this in his article. Futuristic philosophers the world over have long been saying how we need to outgrow a very narrow way of establishing value and replace this with a more sophisticated way to gauge worth. This planet, we astrologers feel, is telling us that the day to instigate such a change is nearer than we think, and that the current financial nadir is another reason for us to review our system. And it gives us an opportunity, right? What is it, the phrase, they always have this saying, and I can't remember what language they attribute it to, and I think Chinese is the language they attribute it to. They say the symbol for crisis is the same symbol as for opportunity. Well, that's what this is. It is an opportunity to make some deeper changes and deepen our awareness of what's going on in the world. So, that being said, I think we're going to need to come back to this next week and talk more, seeing as we are running out of time here. But also, and here's a little homework for you, I'll talk about this in next week's show. See if you can find information about the symbolism numerically of number